Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Matthew, Vice President of the Cybersecurity Summit. I'm pleased to introduce our closing security keynote speaker with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and CISA, Kelley Goldblatt. Ms. Goldblatt is a cybersecurity advisor for Michigan and Ohio with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. In this role, Ms. Goldblatt supports the mission of strengthening the cyber resilience and security of our nation's critical infrastructure. Ms. Goldblatt, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelley Goldblatt. I'm with CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. We are part of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. CISA is a relatively new agency. It became an official operational entity of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security in November of 2018. So CISA was created with the intent of helping both the public and private sector become more secure and resilient. The mission of the organization is to lead the nation's effort to understand and manage risks to the nation's critical infrastructure. Specifically, CISA works with the public and private sector. We work with government of all levels, and we work with partners to share information, build and gather trust, and we work to protect the nation's physical and cyber infrastructure. We have four main areas that we look at. Specifically, we look at emergency communications, federal network protection, proactive cyber protection, and infrastructure and resilience in field operations. We have four main mission essential functions. We do incident management, analysis, capacity building, and information exchange. Specifically, within incident management, we look to support the management of cyber and physical communication incidents in real time to help mitigate and reduce the risks to critical systems throughout the U.S. We look to conduct and analyze data so that we can help recognize threats and vulnerabilities, and with that, be able to provide partners with countermeasures and develop situational awareness. We also look to increase capacity building across all levels of government. So we look to strengthen not only government, but also private sector as well. Then we look to exchange information on both the physical and cyber communications to help reduce risk. CISA has multiple core competencies that all look to develop and strengthen the nation. Specifically, we look to assist with incident management, network defense, risk assessments, and information sharing. We also seek to help with partnership development and emergency communications and capacity development. All of these things help us navigate complex threats and create a shared awareness and increase the strength of the nation. CISA is responsible for providing assistance with maintaining and operating the 16 critical infrastructure sectors. Specifically, we look to provide assistance with helping the physical and cyber side become more resilient. 80% of the critical infrastructure within the U.S. is owned and operated by the private sector. So a lot of our assistance is done on a voluntary basis, and we provide options for consideration for them. So now that we have talked a little bit about CISA as a whole, we're going to focus more on the Cybersecurity Advisor Program. The Cybersecurity Advisor Program, or the CSA program, was created to provide assistance to both public and private partners with doing things like evaluating critical infrastructure cyber risk, promoting and encouraging best practices to mitigate that risk, building capacity and supporting cyber communities and interest and working groups to educate, listen, and coordinate efforts as well. Cybersecurity advisors are found throughout the U.S. Each region has at least one, if not more, cybersecurity advisors that provide assistance to both public and private partners in their region. Cybersecurity advisors offer a variety of services to organizations within their area. Some of these services include advisories, services, assessments, working group collaboration assistance, best practices, and incident response coordination. Cybersecurity advisors work in conjunction and with the protective security advisors for the area. The protective security advisors look at the physical side of the house. So if you think about it, your protective security advisors do, guns, gates, and guards, whereas cybersecurity advisors look at the ones and zeros of business. So together we create a joint holistic approach to solving and trying to address risk for organizations. So we're going to transition and talk a little bit more about the cybersecurity services that CSAs can offer. CISA offers a wide variety of cybersecurity resources for public and private organizations. We have two main categories that we provide assistance with, and that's preparedness and then response. So on the preparedness side, we can provide things like information and threat indicator sharing. We can provide cybersecurity workforce development, training, and awareness. We can provide assistance with planning and executing exercises, as well as creating playbooks, which is basically a step-by-step outline of what actions could be considered taken to deal with incidents. And we also provide assistance with informational products and create recommended best practices and things of that nature. On the response side of the house, CISA does offer both remote and on-site assistance for dealing with cyber incidents. We also have malware analysis, where you can submit malware samples and have CISA analyze it. We have hunt and incident response teams that can potentially provide assistance during an incident. And then we also have and can provide assistance with incident coordination. So for instance, helping you get in contact with the right organization, whether that be, CISA or potentially another federal agency. On the assessment side of the house, CISA offers a wide range of assessments that can be provided to organizations, which are free of charge. They range from strategic to more technical in nature. So for instance, the Cyber Resiliency Review, that is going to ask you questions, for instance, like, do you have policies? Do you have procedures? Where when you go further down the stack, your risk and vulnerability assessment, they're looking specifically at how are those policies and procedures implemented and how does your organization handle specific activities. So we're going to go a little more in depth with regards to a couple of the assessments that were mentioned on the last page. We're going to start out with the Cyber Resiliency Review. The goal of the Cyber Resiliency Review is to assist organizations with measuring their operational resilience and their ability to manage cyber risks. Specifically, the purpose is to evaluate various critical services that are required for the organization to function and do what it needs to do. This assessment in particular can be either a CSA facilitated service, or it can be something that the organization itself can download and administrate. We found in particular that if you're interested in doing a cyber resiliency review, a CRR, that it's better to walk through a CRR with a CSA at least once before doing it on your own, just so that we can help explain some of the questions and, help you get a better understanding of the direction and what the purpose of the questions are specifically. So, and the benefit of this assessment in particular is that it can help look at the organization's maturity. Specifically, this assessment is based on CERT's resilience management model, which looks at basically the management of your operational resiliency. The CRR consists of 10 separate domains. They cover everything from asset management to training and awareness to everything in between. The purpose of this is to be able to get a holistic overview of how the organization is doing and whether or not there are areas that need to be improved upon. So oftentimes we see that an organization may be really strong with situational awareness, but they aren't necessarily managing or understanding their risk management well. And in this case, we can work with the organization to try and provide assistance to strengthen their risk management processes. And again, as stated before, the CRR in particular looks at your maturity levels. And the purpose of this is that, the more mature your organization is, the better prepared that you will be to manage cyber risks and handle cyber incidents. The next cybersecurity assessment that CISA offers that we're going to cover is called the External Dependencies Management. The purpose of the External Dependencies Management, or the EDM assessment, is to evaluate how your organization manages the relationships, specifically with your third-party entities. So the different organizations that you rely on in order to do your day-to-day activities. This specific assessment is a CSA facilitated assessment, and the goal is to better help your organization understand your cyber posture and how and where areas are that can be improved upon to help manage your third-party risks. So the EDM covers three main areas. Specifically, it's going to look at your relationship formation. So how are you creating the relationships that you've got? How are you evaluating them? And that sort of thing. It's also going to look at relationship management and governance. So once you have that relationship established, how are you managing that relationship? And then it also looks at service protection and sustainment. So it's going to assess whether or not you account for dependencies on that external entity as part of the operational activities. So like, for instance, if that third party has an incident, do they need to notify you? Or are they required to notify you of some sort of disruption if it occurs on their end? Things like that. The last assessment that we're going to talk about today is the Cyber Infrastructure Survey. The Cyber Infrastructure Survey is different from the other two assessments that we've talked about in that this one actually looks at specific controls that are put in place and then evaluates that. So specifically, the first two assessments ask more of a high-level question about, say, your firewalls, for instance, whereas this survey in particular is going to ask specifically about settings on your firewall and how you manage your firewall logs and things like that. So it's more tactical compared to the other assessments that we've talked about. Again, this is a CSA facilitated assessment. And the nice thing about this assessment is that it helps you get a real-time view of what your posture looks like and how it can potentially change. So the CIS dashboard is unique to this assessment as well, in that it will allow you to make changes in different areas and see in how that could potentially impact your overall posture or your resiliency. So as you input data into the system itself, it will basically do a bar graph and show you where your score is. And within there, depending on which boxes that you check or uncheck, your bar graph in real time will move either more positive or negative, depending on what the situation is. But the nice thing about it is that it can give you a snapshot. So what that means, for instance, as far as the snapshot is concerned, is that you can see where you stand, but it can also compare you to organizations that are similar to yours. So it will show you basically the high, median, and low for those organizations and show you where you stand within the main domains that it's got and that it addresses. So if you notice, this specific assessment looks more at the management, the overall management of your cybersecurity posture and specifically the actions that you're taking. And it is tactical in nature as opposed to for the CRR that is more, and the EDM that is more looking at your maturity of your organization as opposed to how your actions are being impacted. So now that we've talked about some of the different assessments that CISA and the CSA program has to offer, we're going to transition and talk a little bit about information sharing. So information sharing is vital to helping to keep your organization secure on the cybersecurity front. It's definitely something that we highly recommend. It can be done in a variety of ways. So it can be traditional communications back and forth, but it can also be done through automated sharing. CISA has a program called Automated Indicator Sharing, and basically this offers the ability for machine-to-machine communication that will allow information to be shared on specific threat indicators and different indicators of compromise potentially to be shared back and forth. It's important to note that this program is specifically for machine-to-machine communications. Humans are not involved in this, and you may know of this as being the Six Taxi program, or I should say the Six Taxis program is part of this as well. So in addition to information sharing, CISA can provide some assistance potentially with incident management, and we can do this through a variety of ways. Some of these activities are preparatory in nature, and then others are actual reactionary. We're going to talk first a little bit about the preparatory side of the house, though. Preparing for an incident is important, especially when you're looking at cybersecurity threats and different issues that are out there on the cybersecurity side. CISA has a variety of resources that we can potentially provide your organization to help you become better prepared for it. One of the things that we have are supplemental guides that can provide options for consideration. So for instance, it will provide suggestions for steps that you can take prior to an incident that will help an incident run more smoothly. So for instance, determining what an incident declaration is versus, say, an event declaration is important distinction to be able to make prior to an incident so that you know when to start the full process of incident notification and that sort of thing. The federal government has multiple avenues in which we can potentially provide assistance during an incident. We have different areas that we can provide assistance with. So particularly we can provide assistance with threat response, and then we can also provide assistance with asset response. So what's the difference between the two, right? So when you talk about threat response, you're looking at trying to help with things like attribution and disrupting, malicious cyber activities, whereas asset response is more along the lines of protecting your assets, but then also mitigating vulnerabilities and trying to reduce the impact that a vulnerability or issue may have on a device or service or things like that. So with regards to the federal response, specifically looking at the threat response versus, the asset response. So your law enforcement is more going to be on the threat response side. So your FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations, and the Secret Service, whereas the asset response is going to be more CISA specific, and also the FBI has the Internet Crimes Complaint Center. But in particular, when you look at asset response, CISA is definitely the lead agency on this, and suspected or confirmed incidents can be reported to CISA at the email address which is on the screen. Thank you for attending the presentation today. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to email the cyber advisors at cisa.dhs.gov email address. And also, if you'd like to get connected with your specific CSA, they would be a great asset and location to go to that can get you connected. Thank you for your time.
All right, great. Thank you so much for joining us, Kelley. Hopefully we'll see you again soon at one of our in-person events. And just to take a couple of questions here, how can the services offered by CISA be requested? Would that be the final email address that you posted?
Yes, ma'am. All of our services and contacts with various people throughout the organization can be reached at that email address.
Perfect. And is there a threshold that needs to be met prior to calling CISA when dealing with an incident?
No, ma'am. We'd love to take a call, even if it's something that you're kind of curious about whether or not it is even an incident or not. We can definitely sit down and have a conversation with you about the best path forward.
All right. Thank you again so much for joining us. We truly appreciate it. We know you're busy, so we really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and speak with all of the cybersecurity audience that is watching right now. And everyone, as a reminder, most of the slides from today's event will be posted on our website. If you missed anything or want to rehear anything, you can do so by visiting cybersummitusa.com. All right, thank you again. Hopefully we'll see you all soon. Take care.